You could have Eric All competing against Luke Schoonmaker to be the top tight end in the country. You could have Luke Schoonmaker competing against Eric All to be the top tight end in the country. I mean, that's the kind of players I think they are. And tough, good spring ball. I mean, not one guy on the roster was looking to duck out or get out, and certainly not, either of those two gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. Afternoon Live, part of the Maize and Blue Review. Weekdays at 1 o'clock. We're here, and we're part of Rivals.com, talking about the latest in Michigan sports. That was Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh that you heard there at the outset. He was on the In the Trenches podcast today, which is Thursday, the 14th. And pretty much every Thursday, you come to expect that you'll see former Wolverine on the screen and on the air, and that's Jim Scarcelli. And this Thursday is no different. There he is. And we're ready to say hi to him. Hi, Scar, how are you?
Hey, life is good, Danny. Life is good. Talking about our tight ends. Yeah, I really, those are tight ends, man. Those are not imposters. Those are guys that can block. You play tight end for Michigan, man, you better put your dirt hand in the ground and block and catch and do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it was a great spring. You know what? Something, Danny, I want to really hit. I just thought about it. Was I think we really came out healthy. I think Jim and the coaches are smart with the amount of hitting they do in spring. Just enough. We had a good spring game. There was a lot of contact there because guys were able to make it to the spring game, finish those 15 practices. But that's smart coaching. Limit the hitting. Get guys better. I'm fired up.
We last week talked about the spring game, and we were on the defensive side, and we stayed there. There was so much good information coming out. Such a good conversation, Scar, that you're dropping the knowledge left and right. That we just stayed on the defensive side of the ball, and we promised today we'd get to the offensive side of the ball. So if you want, you can always go and find the podcast, the Afternoon Live. You can look on YouTube to find it. Anywhere else that you're out there. And you want to watch it, that was from last week, and you can check that out. Michigan is now into the cycle of strength and conditioning before they get to the summer phase and then on to fall camp. How about we start right there with the tight ends? Schoonmaker, Scar, I was talking to a former teammate of yours, and he said, ask Scar if he had bigger arms than Schoonmaker has. And so let's start right there. I mean, this is, I know you stay in the gym and everything, but you're not 21 years old anymore. But Schoonmaker's got tree trunks hanging from his. He could be a tackle, man. He is put together. Whose arm's bigger? Scarcelli 85, Schoonmaker 22.
Back in my day, I could hang with him. I'll tell you that. But I'm an old guy now. But yeah, he is him and all. That's where we are as a program. And we've got to get back. Jim put so many guys in the NFL at the tight end position. If coaches wanted to draft a tight end, they knew go to Stanford first. We got to get Michigan to be that school. You want to get a tight end that is a full-time blocking, catching. That's where you come. And he's recruited a lot of good young tight ends. I watched a bunch of them. They're good. They're young. They got to get more Ben Herbert. All them young guys need a little more Ben Herbert, but Schoonmaker and Alls are solid. Yeah, we got to find the third one. And I noticed that Honigsford, he looked a little leaner, Danny. I think I might have mentioned it before. He looked a little leaner because he was really just an imposter. I think, and from a different standpoint, he was a tackle. He was a 300-pound kid. They put at tight end just to block, but they actually threw it to him once or twice late in the year. He looks like he's trimmed down maybe to be more of a full-time tight end that can, catch and block and do everything. But I think those are the top three going in, and that is a solid position for Michigan.
Yeah, Matt Hebner, Lewis Hansen. They've got two freshmen. One of them, Loveland, was in for spring. He looked pretty good. They got Seltzer. They got a couple other guys, Bredesen, and you hear this a lot from, and it's one of those off-season things. Oh boy, you're stacked. Boy, the 2 deep, the 3 deep. I don't know if there's a better position group in the country, but when you're talking about Michigan's tight ends, all previous to last year, you had heard you talk to people and say, well, what do you hear about? Oh, Eric All, man, he's great. Yeah, he's a playmaker. He's gonna split the seam. They can't guard him. And then he dropped the ball a little bit 2 years ago, but last year we saw the playmaking ability. He had that the great play against Penn State where he took it the distance. What was that, 47 yards against Penn State, that 47-yard TD in the last couple minutes to win that game. That was awesome. So, yeah, they are stacked at tight end, and I'm with you, Joel Honingford, whether it's a running or, he can go out and catch passes too. They look really good there. How about the quarterback position here? We didn't see J.J. McCarthy throw the ball. He was a holder. He was with the Mays team, and Cade McNamara, I think he threw the ball 4 times. And, the first one he had Donovan Edwards kind of leaking out of the backfield. I think Edwards could have caught that. You see a little bit. That could be very dangerous for Michigan. The second pass, he had Cornelius Johnson streaking down the sideline for a touchdown, completely underthrew him and missed him. And then the next pass, he was with the other team, and he put the ball right on Sandristow. That could have been a catch. And then, it ended up being 0 for 4. But we've seen enough from Cade McNamara to know that heading into the opener, however things play out, Michigan's looking pretty good at the quarterback position here.
Yeah, when I watched him, as I've watched this kid, I watched him at practice when I went, and this kid is just, man, is he everything I would want as a leader. He's a take responsibility guy. He seems really smart. He doesn't point fingers, and he just seems like a real leader, kind of guy I would want to gravitate to. Not a mouthy guy, and definitely we got a solid guy there. Our quarterback position with him is great from a leadership talent standpoint. He continues to be accurate. JJ was out, so we know what he can do. He'll be ready. He's an athlete. I think we're going to see more JJ, and I'll throw it out. I think JJ is going to play at least a third of the snaps next year. He's going to be in all the time, not just to run them. That's my prediction. I think he's going to play. You got to play him. Davis Warren, the first thing I want to see, Danny, is accuracy, and that kid is accurate. That's what you want in your quarterback. Put the ball on the money, and he appears to be accurate. Can he get guys in? Can he get us in the right play? It looks like he's got average speed enough to avoid. He's not going to run like JJ. He's not going to give us some of those things. He's probably maybe a step quicker than McNamara, because those are the first 2 things I look at when I'm playing defense is the guy accurate and can he move? But he moves good enough. I did see him avoid a little bit. That was the big thing I was looking at. We saw the 2 young guys get in late. I like the athletic ability. I like their technique of throwing the ball. 16 is one of the freshmen, and 10. Denny, I'm sorry, I forgot their names, but they both throw the ball from a technique standpoint. I thought it was good. And, I don't think they're going to have to modify, the coaches are going to have to modify their technique. They just got to be accurate. So that's the thing we hope to get with them. They're definitely athletic. Jim wants guys that are athletic, but Davis Warren throws that out. Here's a kid that isn't the big, isn't the runner guy. So there's depth there. There's future there. There's potential there, and a lot of good things for the future from a lot of those young guys.
Yeah, Jaden Denegal is number 16 from California. Then from Texas, Alex Orji, who you saw throwing the ball and taking off, and already physically looks like, if they needed somebody to get in their short yardage situation, he was stopped dead in that spring game, ended up willing himself for an extra yard there. So, yeah, it looks good as the true freshman coming in there. I think because of the schedule that Michigan has, it is going to allow Harbaugh and company to do whatever they want with these quarterbacks. You're saying playing McCarthy 33% of the time. If Michigan, the best laid plans, we can, sit around and discuss them. But against Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, and Maryland. Those 4 teams, Michigan's going to be a double-digit favorite. They should be able to get into the second half where, they're up 14, up 3-4 scores, and, you can get the backups in there. How they get, how they end up, series to series, quarter to quarter, we saw it. There wasn't really, I know you say rhyme or reason. There were different places that they inserted McCarthy in, the first play of the second half against Wisconsin, in different spots. And, they can do whatever they want that way. And the competition that everybody was looking forward to in the spring between the two didn't materialize because McCarthy couldn't throw the ball. But when they get into, I don't know where he's at with the strength and conditioning here, but I would think in the summer phase, maybe a little bit of that competition going on, certainly in fall camp. And then in those first 4 games, they can continue to compete to see, who really is going to be the guy when they have to go to Iowa City on October 1st.
Yeah, I neglected to say this about JJ too. From what I see, we all just watch. We look at the clips, we hear him interviewed. He just really appears to me like a guy I want to play for too. He seems like a real team guy, and not a me guy. So you can hear my mindset as a former player and a coach, what I'm looking for, and our quarterbacks seem to have that. And yeah, you're right, Denny. As a coach, I always like to have a few games on that schedule where you can play your whole bench. You can play a lot of guys, and that's crucial early on. And you're right. We got 3 games like that where, it could play out like that, and that's great for team morale. That's great for identifying who are your gamers, because there's a lot of young guys that are going to get to play that, you've just seen them in practice. Some of them are going to play better than you thought, and some of them aren't going to play as good as you thought when they get in the game. But I'll throw this out real quick. If I'm the schedule guy with this team Michigan has now, this is the kind of team I want to open up on the road at Oklahoma. I want to open up on the road at Texas like we go in a couple of years, because we got enough guys on defense back, but we got a quarterback back. But it didn't play out like that this year. But for me, I don't want to open up with Texas on the road in a few years, or Oklahoma with the first-year starting quarterback. But there's good depth at quarterback. And Denny, let me just say this real quick about the tight ends. People say we got depth. I see 2-3 guys. I don't want to go to Eastland, play Michigan State or some of these, or Penn State tomorrow with those young tight ends. They ain't ready. We've got the luxury with the guys we have there to develop them more. But I just saw a lot of smaller guys, not physical enough. They'll be ready in a couple of years. I just wanted to throw that out.
Well, the guys that are going to be ready are the guys up front. And you've got some returning starters, Ryan Hayes at left tackle, Trevor Keegan at left guard. They bring in, they transfer from Virginia, Oluskun Oluwatimi there at center. You couldn't ask for anything better. You couldn't have heard anything better so far since he's been here, 55 for the Maize and Blue, who was in there for the spring. Right guard, Zach Zinter, who might be the best out of all of them. And I was just listening to Jim Harbaugh this morning, and he said that Trente Jones has emerged the most out of the younger players. And if you think about Jones, he was, you saw him last year come in those short yardage situations where they really loaded up. I think they call it their Buffalo package. And, Trente Jones out there at right tackle. And Olu, if you're saying, hey, is he a better run blocker or pass blocker? Pro Football Focus had him graded out really highly as a run blocker. And then you think about Jones, this should be a road grader type offensive line if everything stays the same to September the 3rd across the board. They look pretty good. I think you could make a case that that's the strength of the team, the offensive line.
Yeah, there's we got some good depth there. You start with Olu, and yeah, he's not a tall kid. Sometimes, Denny, in those interior spots, defensive nose guards, centers, not being tall can be an advantage at times. But yeah, he looks solid. His technique is good. He's physical. The question at center is, who's the backup? And I think if something happened and they had to play tomorrow and something happened to Olu, I think it would be Keegan. I saw Keegan rotate in there. They had Crispin in there a little bit too. Crippen,
yeah. Harbaugh
I
mentioned him having a good spring right behind and right there with Olu. Yep.
Jim does things the same way that, when Coach Schembechler did things, the same way I did things as a coach. You got your 5 starting offensive linemen. Now you want to play, you want your best player. So your 6th best offensive lineman, he might be a right tackle, but if the left tackle goes down, he's going over the left tackle. So you want to try to keep your best players in. Sometimes those guys can play guards also, but I think Crippen. I think Keegan is the backup center from what I was seeing. I saw a pretty good difference. So I think that's the way we go because I think they have more confidence in some of the other guards more so than the young kid. Crippen will be a good player, but he's young, And Danny, I want to say this. I want to get into some of these players, but I played with a guy named Rich Stringer, big guy out of Wisconsin. He was a backup for 4 years. He started his 5th year, had a great year, got drafted 3rd round by the Lions. Started 1 year, played about 5-6 years in the NFL. There's a lot of guys on this team that are going to be really good. They just got to get more Ben Herbert. So anyway, center, I like our center situation because I saw 2 good players there with depth. Our guard situation is this. You meant Keegan and what's the other guy?
Zinter.
Yeah, those guys are. No, Zinter was the one they rotated in there. 65. I'm sorry, Denny. Zinter was the one they put in at center. Our guard situation is great. The kid from Sterling Heights. There's like 3 guys I saw rotating in there that are all going to be competing to be that 3rd guard. The kid from Sterling Heights, El Hadi.
Yeah, Giovanni El Hadi. Yep.
Yeah, and
Raheem Anderson looked like he was in there a little bit too.
Anderson and Crippen, all 3 of those guys are going to be battling to see who is the 3rd guard, and they'll play with that. So all 3 of those guys are similar. I don't know who's going to come out, but there's depth there. I saw athletic ability, I saw toughness. They need more Ben Herbert, and then a tackle. It looks like 52 is the third one because you got the 2 guys. Obviously, you talked about Jones and Hayes. We know those guys are going to be solid. And now the third one. Who's the third one? It looked like it's Barnhart.
Yeah, Carson Barnhart. Yeah, swing tackle.
Yeah, he's the guy I think is the 3rd one if something happened. He's a solid guy. He's been around. And then they're trying to get 79 Percy ready. He probably looked like the 4th one from my evaluation. But there's good depth there. We got probably 10 guys that can play. A lot of 7 of them have played a lot. They're big, older guys. I like the older guys. I don't like young guys in there. I don't want to be counting on no 2nd-year guy. But there's good depth there, and we were moving people. We were protecting. You make a good point. It could be the strength of our offense. It could be. Because let me say this too, Danny. In spring football, I think the defense has the advantage because we know the offense. We know what they run, how they run it. We know their communication. So in a spring football game, if we're seeing our offense move our defensive line or run some of our basic run plays, that's a pretty good sign for the offense. It's not a good sign for the defense because I seriously think the defense has the advantage. But I did see some good movement by our offensive line against good players that we had in there at the time, the Michigan defense. So there was some encouraging things, and especially starting out with that transfer center. He was moving Mozzie a little bit and moving some of those young, good defensive players.
Yeah, and we're talking the offense today, and we got to get to the running backs and wide receivers. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you because the Hassan Haskins, he's off to the NFL. There's some good backs, but the wide receivers, it really looks like they have. I mentioned offensive line that could be the strength of it. If it's not the tight ends or the offensive line, it is the wide receivers. Where now Ronnie Bell is coming back, who was going to be the leader last year. They got 3 freshmen that are coming in that physically or talent-wise, Harbaugh called them freaks, which is good. when you're talking about that. And then we saw it a little bit in the spring. But last year, Michigan ran the ball a lot. And I just wanted to put this up here and have you tell me what you think a good split would be. I'm looking at the team statistics from last year. If you look really close, you can see that that all together there, that Michigan, they had 969 plays, where you can see right at the last number where it says Michigan down there, total plays 969. So you divide the amount of pass attempts, 395 into there, and you get 41%. And you divide 574 carries, which you can see in rush attempts, into 969, and you get 59%. So Michigan running the ball 59% of the time. Sustainable, is that the identity that you think that this team wants moving forward, that Jim Harbaugh wants, because of the talent that they have at wide receiver and, tight end, and the quarterbacks that they have? Do you think that they even that up a little bit more, where you think it's 50-50? How would you see that?
Denny, I think Jim's philosophy is, we heard him at the beginning of the year last year. People were concerned because we just ran the ball. But I think his philosophy is, similar to the people I played for. If they can't stop your power play or your zone play, then we're going to run it. And we're going to keep running it, and we're going to keep getting better at it. And we're going to run our stuff, okay? And now, so I really believe, and I think Jim does too, offensive football, a lot of it is based on what is the defense doing. If they can't stop our basic fundamental run plays, and if the only way they can stop it is they have to be dishonest by sneaking more people in to defend the run game, then we're going to throw, okay? So I think that's the philosophy, but from a recruiting standpoint, if a young receiver sees this and he understands this is what Michigan is, there are some guys, if a Clemson or Oklahoma or, the guy at USC, some of these guys that really want to air it out, some of these things could be a disadvantage for Michigan. Okay. There's no doubt there. But at the same time, the tight ends might be more looking to go to Michigan. So, but yes, Danny, to say that these splits and these percentages, there are recruits and there are people that are going to look at it. But my feeling is we want to be good in all of that. We want to be great in the spread formation when we go empty with 4 receivers and a tight end. We want to be great in that formation to give people problems when we have to throw. We want to be great with our 6 offensive linemen and 3 tight ends, or in our basic stuff like we did against Ohio State, where we had to run the ball down at the end to win the football game, to run some clock out. So we want to be able to be good in all of these. And I don't know if he really cares so much about this split as being good in both facets of the game, running the ball and passing the ball. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It does make sense. Keep doing it until they stop you, and then it can set up your passing game. These all the stats there, that includes Western Washington and Northern Illinois. If you just look at conference games, I did the splits on that as well. Just the conference games, I think just 9. So it's still pretty similar. 57% of the time they ran the ball. Where you look at even if you put 59%. And then it just goes down to 57%. So they stayed on the ground, even when they got into the Big Ten. But I think you're right. You look at the offensive line, you look at the tight ends, and I remember the Washington game. What was it, 10-0 at the half? And I'm sitting there discussing it with some friends and folks and everything else. And I said, Michigan's got to throw the ball coming out in the second half. And they didn't come out. They didn't come out throwing the ball. They came out in the first series. It was more ground and pound, but they had success, and they went right down the field, and they ended up having 56 carries for 343 yards, and it was ground and pound. But everybody's like, wow, when are they going to get the passing game going? Well, against Northern Illinois, they aired one out and had a long one. Rutgers, they struggled, but then when they needed to, and it felt like a weight off the offense's back, they went to a flea flicker against Wisconsin, and Cade McNamara was able to get that touchdown, which to me felt like it was huge for this team. It was in Big Ten play. It was against Wisconsin. It was on the road, and they came out and they made a big play in the air.
Danny, I'm going to say two things too about running the ball, an offense that runs the ball. As a defensive football player, man, there ain't nothing better than playing defense for Michigan on a hot, miserable day, and your offense is grinding for 6-7 minute drives, abusing their defense, and you're cooling down, drinking water, and that's a beautiful thing. And I want to say this too. Those early games, these coaches are smart we got at Michigan. Those early games when we were pounding and grinding and getting better at running our basic stuff, running our stuff, the meat, why aren't you throwing it? But we're getting better. We're running our stuff, technique, repetitions. We're getting better at blocking our stuff. All of that we did early in the year, don't fool yourself if you don't think that was a factor when we had to do it against Ohio State that last game of the year. All those repetitions and all that confidence that you're building in your players and your offense by running that stuff against, Akron or whatever the hell we were pushing around early in the year, that stuff matters because you're just perfecting it and you're building confidence.
Good stuff. Let's talk about those the running backs. They lose Haskins there. Early in the season, it was Haskins and Corum, kind of a tandem there, a 1-2 punch. Corum got banged up towards the middle of the year and end of the year, and then it ended up being the Hassan Haskins show. So Haskins is out, but we saw enough of Donovan Edwards. It's a 1-2 punch that you're talking about right now when it comes to these running backs. Both of these guys look like they could be stars. What do you think of Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards?
Yeah, there's no question. Corum is a solid, tough inside runner. They'll use him on some of the flare passing. He's a good pass protector. Donovan Edwards is he's the game breaker. He gets past the linebacker. He can go the distance. He's the guy that I remember hearing Urban Meyer a couple of years ago say, Michigan doesn't have any game breakers. Their runs are all 16, 18 yards. Well, Donovan Edwards is the guy that can go the distance if he gets past the linebacker. And another thing they're going to use Donovan Edwards on, I think, is he's the guy they're going to split out. When we want to go empty, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12 or something, and we keep certain personnel in the game, I think you're going to see a lot of Donovan Edwards lined up as a receiver because we want to do what Georgia did to us, Danny. Remember how they split out Junior Colson in coverage over that fast running back? They threw a touchdown to him. We're going to do some of that. We did it in the spring game. We got 2 solid guys. So we're good there. 22 got in there. Dunlap. He reminds me of Higdon, the old Higdon. Remember, he just looks like him. Similar moves.
Same number.
Yeah, we're trying to find that third guy. The Mullins kid looked really good to me, elusive. He's tough. He plays linebacker. So there are some good-looking young guys there that
if I can jump in, Harbaugh just today mentioned that Khalil Mullings will stay as a two-way player. He said the same thing with Sandra Still, who is a wide receiver, and we saw as a nickel corner in the spring game. And then he also mentioned that A.J. Henning out of the backfield, Debo Samuel is the name that comes up. Cordero Patterson is, I think maybe he's just exclusively now a running back, but he wears 84. But they're talking about Henning in that role as Samuel. So there you go. After you got Donovan Edwards, you've got Blake Corum. You just talked about Tavier Dunlap. Mix in A.J. Hennings and Khalil Mullings, and there's 5 guys that you're talking about that could be running the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah, and there's good depth there. There's young guys, and they've got time to develop yet. But yeah, I think we got 2 guys we know can play, and they can give us different problems for the defense. And I really like Mullins. I just like tough guys. You know, Denny, and I think the running back position is solid. We've recruited well. But getting back to the receivers real quick, you know what concern I would have just as a Michigan guy? There's so much talent there. There's so many great athletes there. Keeping all those kids here at Michigan is going to be a challenge because there's going to be serious competition. You got a lot of guys that can play, and it's going to, can we keep them all there? Because there are serious athletes there. We got big, fast, athletic guys we brought in. So both those positions are stocked with good young guys, and keeping them all here, especially at the receiver position, is a challenge.
Yeah, Cornelius Johnson, because of his size and just what you saw from him last year. If I was answering my own question, like who's the go-to guy at wide receiver, I would look at Kojo. But with Ronnie Bell coming back, he would have been the guy last year, and he had the big touchdown in the first 76-yard touchdown. And the Harbaugh said today in that podcast that he thinks that Bell could be better than he was before the injury. He's coming along. He's almost 100%. That's great news. So those are, I would put down as two game breakers. And then Andrell Anthony, there's three that you're talking about there. Roman Wilson caught that touchdown in the Big Ten championship game from Donovan Edwards. I think and he caught a touchdown against Penn State. I think he might be a little bit underrated. There's four legit guys, and we hadn't talked about the trio of freshmen that Michigan and it has, and put Henning into the mix. You're right, like that. You can't get all those guys the ball. Yeah,
so that's the challenge. That's the challenge for the Michigan the Michigan offensive coaches. If you got guys you recruited, they're receivers. I mean, I played with Anthony Carter, one of the best ever. He didn't get the ball thrown to him a lot. That's just what we did. He knew it when he was getting recruited, and trying to keep those receivers happy. Throw them the ball to them every now and then. But that's a big challenge for the coaches to get guys that want to go out there and block as receivers and maybe not get too many looks. But the great coaches find a way to do it, man.
Give me a Carter story, Scar. Did Carter ever wear those tearaway uniforms in practice, or they just have those in the game? Anybody else wear those?
No, just in the game. Yeah, that was a couple of years. There was a period there where those were allowed. Yeah, I think the quarterback too. I think Steve Smith wore it too. The tearaway shoes. Anthony Carter, the greatest athlete I ever seen, man. He could dunk a basketball any which way. The guy was phenomenal. Catch balls here and there. Great guy, humble guy. I got some other thoughts that I like seeing in that spring game. And there's two ways to look at it, but I like seeing some of the trick plays because everybody's looking at that film. Michigan State's going to look at that film. They saw that was our tight end Alls through that pass, right?
Yeah, he was one of them. Clemens, I think, threw one too, didn't he?
Yeah, that stuff is good because it makes people have to deal with it. And they're going to have our spring game, and it shows that we have guys that can do it. So that was something to see. I like seeing that. I talked about Stringer, the old guy I played with. And there's another guy I played with, tight end, Eric Caddis. He didn't start for 4 years. He started his 5th year. And he had a long career in the NFL. So, there's a lot of these young guys, especially in the offensive line. They got to get physically bigger. It looked like another thing on the special teams. Anthony was getting a lot of he got the majority of the reps catching the punts. So maybe they're going to go away from Henning there, or they're just trying to get him ready. But Anthony was getting the majority of the punts, and that's something that was kind of a concern with Henning. He wasn't always, as reliable, I think, probably as the coaching staff would have liked. I want to say this too, real quick, Danny, about Kaepernick being there, and there's people got their views, whatever. You got to remember something, Denny. When you coach guys, I've coached guys for 30 years from all over. I run into these guys. I hear from some of the guys I coached. You are always the coach for your player. Always. That's your former player. You're his former coach. You're always going to do what's best for your player. and regardless of what the heck is going on. So I just want to say that's Jim's former player, and he's loyal to him, and Kaepernick is loyal to Coach Harbaugh, and they have a relationship. And I just want to say that's just him being loyal. If anything, that helps recruiting from that standpoint. That Jim Harbaugh doesn't care about what anybody thinks. He's going to be loyal to his guy. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I thought it was a stroke of genius in a lot of ways. You could talk about the controversy, but it had all eyes on the Michigan spring game. And I was reading some stuff about the Lions draft, and one of the writers had pointed out that they had sent somebody to Michigan to watch Kaepernick throw. Even though it was live on the Big Ten Network, you could watch the throws there, but they wanted to see him in person. Well, now how many times have you heard a scout, at a game saying, we went there for this, but then this guy jumped out. You go, there might have been a half dozen NFL guys there that otherwise would not have been at the spring game that took a look and said, hey, what about this guy? We're going to have to keep an eye on him, make a little mental note. So I thought from that standpoint, it was a stroke of genius, getting the attention from NFL types and some of those eyeballs on your team. Plus, it was a little bit of, I've sat through a lot of halftimes, and I like the band. And you go to basketball games, they got dogs catching Frisbees and, all kinds of different things. But, watching Colin Kaepernick, most of the people were like, hey, let's see it. I stayed in my seat. I didn't go walking around because Kaepernick was throwing. I had my camera out. I had, took a couple videos. So I thought from that standpoint, it was pretty smart.
Denny, another thing, though, I was trying to get a feel for schematically, defensively and offensively. I think I talked about offensive last week. There was a couple subtle little tweaks, but the foundation is we are what we are. What Mike McDonald brought over here from the Ravens, that's what we are. And if Minter was to leave next year, we'll get another guy to run this system. And I saw a few little tweaks, but fundamentally, our system is what it is. And now we just got another year to perfect it. The downside is everybody knows what we run. Everybody knows all our little tweaks. The upside is we got a whole nother spring to perfect the techniques and the schemes and the stunts and do what we do.
All right, we've gone through the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and offensive line. Here's some feedback from Jason, who says, I think D. Edwards will be a tad bigger, more athletic version of Haskins. With Edwards, there is a new Thunder in town, and he likes the show. What do you think? Donovan Edwards.
Yeah, he's right. I think I talked about it after I went to that practice. That was one of the first thing I saw. Man, he's been in the training table a little bit. The boy's got some hooks on him, man. He's pumped up a little more. He's a little thicker, and yeah, you got it too, Danny. I see it, man. He looks thicker. He's a little more, be a little more physical, and. Yeah, we got a great facilities there, great strength coach. He's right about that, and that's where you really see a college football player. The biggest improvement is really from that first year to that second year. That's that you get that full year in the weight room, you get that full year eating that good training table, and that's where I think you see the biggest improvement.
Yeah, I just think, I like Blake Corum. I think he gets a little bit of the short end of the stick when you talk about running backs. He was right there 1 and 1A with Haskins last year. I know he dropped 2 passes. The one in the Michigan State game was pretty glaring, and then he got hurt. So I think people might be a little bit down on him, but I think he's he's like an all Big Ten type player. Donovan Edwards, though, his ceiling. He's got NFL written all over him. You look at some of the backs in the NFL, like Aaron Jones from the Packers, guys that can run it and catch it with equal ability. You saw Donovan Edwards taking off. He had the 10 catches against Maryland last year. He could be the best running back in the country. I mean, that's how good. At least I'm not predicting that. I'm saying he's got that kind of ceiling. So I think it's lightning. You want to start talking about Tavier Dunlap or Khalil Mullings? Maybe they'll be the Thunder. they'll be looking for some of that thunder. But I think they've got lightning right now coming out of the backfield.
Yeah, there's, I really like Cora, man. That kid, give me number one thing, secure the damn football. He secures the ball, okay? I want a guy that I can count on. The whole team is counting on you to secure the ball. And he pass protects like crazy. He's a tough kid. He'll get you that extra yard. He makes guys miss. He can. He might not be the game breaker like an Edwards, but boy, he does all the other stuff. Great attitude kid, tough. Yeah, he had the one drop, but I think our offensive. Again, we move that ball against some real good defensive players running the ball in that scrimmage, and that's a good thing to think about coming in, man.
Yeah, Corum had a 67-yard run against Iowa. How long was that run that he had in the second half against Ohio State? I mean, he's a playmaker. On the kickoff return, he didn't go for a touchdown, but he had a 79-yarder in the opener. I mean, I do think he's sold a tad bit short by Michigan fans, but great feat. And, Scar, you've been doing this show now, I think for 5 months, you have never sounded more like a coach than you did right there in that last minute, talking about ball security and blocking from the running backs. I loved it.
Danny, believe me, as a player too, man, let me tell you, we had a terminology that football coaches use. It's called sudden change. Sudden change is when some idiot dropped the ball. When you give the ball back, you throw an interception, you fumble the ball. I don't want that as a player, and you sure as hell don't want it as a coach. So that is crucial. Who's going to secure the dang ball, man? But again, man, I just I like how we were able to run the ball in that scrimmage. That's good stuff. Because if we can run the ball versus our defense in April, we will run the ball against the Buckeyes in November.
Woo! All right.
And, another good thing I wanted to mention too, that the same thing about how I believe our offense helps our defense, because our offense runs just about everything that we'll see throughout our schedule, spread, 3 tight ends, all the different stuff. But our defense does so many different things schematically that it really forces our offense and our offensive players to really, mentally be sharp, because we do a lot of things that force our offense to think and adjust, and that helps. That's going to help our offense be able to move and run the ball against Nebraska and things they do, or what does Ohio State do or Michigan State. So that diversity of scheme helps our offense too, that our defense does.
All right. Well, I'll throw some coach stuff at you. The players made in the offseason, this cycle, strength and conditioning over the next 4 weeks. Let's see some gains there, the summer phase. And then they got to be ready to go into fall camp, which, would be early August. So there it is. Any final thoughts here, Jim Scarcelli?
Yeah, I'm really, really optimistic. We came out healthy. We got a lot of depth, a lot of good players. I know they're pissed off and they're not fat and happy. There's a lot of competition that's going to drive everybody. We got the coaching looked good. I want to make a comment about one of our callers last time I was on. When I was talking about the Michigan man, he said, well, Frieder was a Michigan man. He graduated from Michigan. That was the statement. That was the comment. And I just want to make sure that we understand. Bo didn't care where Fisher went. He was commenting about a Michigan man, and Fisher was still employed at Michigan. So in his eyes, that was a Michigan man. Frieder was no longer employed at Michigan. He was employed at Arizona State. So he didn't consider him a Michigan man. So when you're giving the speech, when you're doing the motivating, there are no rules. You can make the damn rules. And Coach Schembechler considered Fisher a Michigan man because he was employed at Michigan. Just want to point that out in response to one of our callers and listeners, that was my take on Schembechler's response.
You're a Michigan man, Scar. Appreciate the time, and we look forward to talking with you next week.
Go Blue!
There he is, Jim Scarcelli. I like that.